2.
Calling to order the Transparency, Engagement, and Communications Committee meeting on May 15th. I am here with Councilman Britt Moore, Councilman Patrick Harmon, and myself, Amanda Cook, standing in for Michael Holmes, who cannot be present today. Today, we just have one item on the agenda. It's 2024-195, the Marketing and Community Engagement Summary, and we will be hearing from Jerron Hollis, Managing Director.
Good morning. Jerron Hollis, Managing Director, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We are here to take a few minutes to talk about some of our community engagement strategies that we're doing in the city. I'd like to also recognize Ryan Ferguson, who's our marketing manager. In case we get into some of the weeds on some of this, he'll be helping us kind of navigate some of that conversation. This is an extension of a previous conversation that we've had, and hopefully with this presentation, you'll get an idea of some of the tools and elements that we're using to connect with the community. So I'll go ahead and get started. With our marketing, one of the things that we try to do is use a variety of platforms, and we've always said, how do we take what some would see as mundane information and find a creative and interesting way to present it? And so we use the tools that we have for outreach, our website, our social platforms, video, and news releases. And it's on that foundation that we engage with the community along with community partners to try to get the word out about what's going on to as many segments of our community that we can. We also have tools that we use. Podcasts, we started those last year with Civic Brand when we were building up the momentum for our branding efforts. But printed materials, flyers, banners, we use lots of digital tools, geofencing, finding certain sections of our population based on what the content is and trying to really focus in on a particular audience. So we've got those tools along with some of the standard things, billboards, magazines. And one of the things you see in the picture here is the experiential marketing. Many of you remember when we did the brand launch, we had hundreds of folks out in front of the stadium and gave them a sort of a bird's eye view, hands-on approach to how we see our brand. And those are the kinds of things where people can see, feel, and touch, where they can take something back to their communities or will have experienced something that they can talk about in the days to come. Our website, highpointnc.gov, it is a snapshot here on your monitors. In the last 30 days, we've had 100,000 users who visited, 3 times as many views, pages. You'll see there some of the most visited pages, the top pages. Every now and then we'll get something that we've marketed and it surprises us. The museum has a Vietnam War exhibit, and it's received a ton of traffic through the website. What we do is we use our analytic tools and try to figure out what people are clicking on, and the strategy is to, and I'll talk about this in a slide or two, to try to strategically put the things that people are looking for on the page in a way that they can find it on the web page.
Can
Yes,
we
sir.
ask questions as we go? Y'all good with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ask away.
Distinguish the definition of a user versus the 300,000 views, and does that include people paying utility bills?
So for the users, and I'll let Ryan come in and clean up whatever it is that I might bungle here, but the engagement of the individual person that goes on the page would be a user. Now, what they look at when they're on the page. So if I go on the page, I'm a user, I might look at 5 different links or 5
Right.
different pages. So the number of people that are on the page for the last 30 days and the views are the things that we have on the page that they're looking at. So when you go on there, maybe if you looked at that, maybe the average person is looking at 3 different areas on the page when
Right.
they visit. Does that answer your question?
So the views came from those 100,000 users?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And does that include somebody that, if I go online, just pay my bill and then leave, am I Am I a user?
Yes, yes. Anybody that engages with the page for any reason of
reason.
the functions that we have on there would be
Okay.
included in that number.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. On our website, as far as functionality, our ITS department, they hold the contract and they help control the security aspect of the website. The department, our marketing folks, will essentially function as the webmaster. So ADA compliance, design, those types of things. We train individuals in the departments to be responsible individually for their content updates and links. And oftentimes, we'll have to go back and do refreshers or help them update that content. But it's a constant thing. So you think about the website, it's not a static entity. There's always things. For example, when we got the new council that came in, we had this period of trying to find, making sure the names were right, making sure the new pictures. So it's almost like a living entity. And so the website is constantly having needs for updating content and making sure we have the latest and greatest for the public. We're currently in the process with our vendor, Civic Plus, going through a redesign of the website. And this happens every couple of years. We go through and make sure that the functionality is as current as possible. We try to do things in essence, making sure that the way the information is presented and the experience that the user has when they go onto their website is as streamlined and maximized as possible. So as we go through that website redesign, we're looking at September, October timeframe to have that done. But as we were talking about earlier, one of the things that we look at is the types of information that those 100,000 users that we talked about the last 30 days, what are they looking at and how can we make sure that that content, the design and layout of the website matches with what the users expect when they get onto the page.
Duran, what about people who speak not English? I mean, is there a translation kind of option for?
There's
multiple
a
languages spoken in the city?
There is a translation option. Now, Ryan, I don't know how many of the languages. I'll let Ryan speak specifically to the languages.
Google does have Google Translate, which translates into multiple different languages. However, Google Translate isn't always the most accurate. There are some things that, some different pages like Transit and things that have had translation services come in and really translate in different. They took a look at their target demographic that would need that. So I believe that's, there's Spanish and Vietnamese. There might be one other one that they have specifically for transit riders that they have. So there are some documents and things that will have translation services come in to really have that if it's static information that's on there. But yes, you can use Google Translate. The problem, again, with Google Translate sometimes is that information doesn't always come across correctly. That's nothing on our side. That's just kind of Google's translation service.
But there is a project, and this is Councilman Cook, in progress to do a major language.
Yes, there's an initiative, yes, Madam Chair, with our Human Relations Division and Race McCray, our division manager, and the UNC Chapel Hill. There's a language access plan that's underway that looks at some of those things beyond just the Google Translate and figures out what are the major languages spoken and what key essential information we need to translate so that everyone gets the information that they need. So we're talking about critical information, health, safety, those kinds of things, and then the things that are most needed for your transactions that happen the most with those languages that are spoken. So that language access plan is underway, and that will help us to look into additional ways we can engage with people with English as a second language.
Very good.
Social media, you see some of the platforms that we're involved with there. The big thing there is understanding that people engage in different ways. They're based on their demographics, based on what they're most comfortable with, the kinds of things that they're interested in. So we're involved in some capacity in those platforms, be it X or Instagram or Nextdoor with our neighborhoods. So we try to stay engaged and be in as many other places from a social media standpoint, be in the same places where our public is. As far as social, just some stats, 70% of Americans use social media. For us, it's a line of communication with our organization, the community. Just a couple of examples, we handle on any given week, we'll have 5 to 10 direct customer service questions, daily engagement. So they're not calling the phone, they're not coming in, they're asking us questions through social media and trying to find out, how do I get this or that? It gives us another opportunity to engage and direct people to where they're going. Also, the news media is using social more and more. They follow what we're doing through there. And when we talk about in a second about news releases, we're finding more that our media agencies are looking at what we're posting on social and using that as a basis of who they want to interview and what stories they want to run, be it print or video. We've got 40,000 plus followers across our platforms, with, in the last 30 days, reach of 146,000. Our engagement for Facebook, for example, is almost 13%. Typically, a company is shooting for 5% engagement. The way that we post and the way that we maximize our users' time where they are with when we post and what we post, we more than double what the average company would shoot for in engagement. So we're really happy about our Facebook engagement in this case. And there's some things there. Reach, we find the most people Monday at 8, for example, and we have the most engagement, people actually spending time on those individual links or individual posts Tuesday in the evening. So those are just some things that kind of help put it in perspective of who's actually looking at our information and how they're engaging with it on our social platforms.
So, Jerron,
Yes.
none of these things are like permanently out there. But I mean, what's kind of the life cycle of a post? I mean, that people are going to see it, and then after 2 days, 3 days, it's just forgotten. And
Yeah, the post, it depends on what it is. Some of the posts take a life of their own, and that engagement as people are continuing to share it, depending on what it is. But it is not like a bulletin board where, as the timeline moves, more content kind of goes in. But the life of a post is really connected to the engagement and how people decide to interact with it as they're sharing it, as they're moving it. But we know that our users have an expectation that we will have relevant content that we're putting out. So if we know that people are engaging with us on Facebook, for example, it helps us understand that we have a responsibility to continue to keep that content fresh and that engagement continues as we continue to have relevant content for those visitors that go to those pages. Ryan, was there anything on the post that you wanted to?
No, just to kind of maybe, so social media has changed quite a bit over the past many years, and the way the algorithms are set up, and the way you see content is different from the way I see content is different from the way she sees content, right? So depending on what you're viewing and what your interest and likes are, that's what's going to pop up more. We take the approach of, we might not have, we have 16,000 people in here. We don't have 116,000 people that like our page. But we have more organic reach and better engagement with the folks that we do have, that if Jerron had 1 million people that liked his page, there might only be a couple hundred people that sees a post, right? But we build up our organic reach, and we use our analytics to make sure we're posting at the right times, so people are engaging with it. So even if we had half of that, or if we had 100 people and he's got 1 million, we're still reaching way more of that those people than maybe Jerron would, because of the way we were build up our organic reach, the way we use some paid reach and digital advertising. But what we do, instead of just throwing money out everywhere and just having posts on, we really concentrate on organic reach to build it up. So if you ask how long does a post live, like Jerron had mentioned, it's not really just a wall anymore that you can kind of go in there and scroll and see. And it depends on what platform you're using. We utilize stories a lot and reels because they're really engaging, but those only last 24 hours. But that has a greater impact maybe than just a flyer that we posted somewhere, right? Because then people are engaging with it, they're viewing it, they're either sharing it, they're commenting or liking. And if you do that more and more, that builds up the organic reach and allows us to hit more people. So depending on the type of questions you're asking, on what platform it is, how many times it has been shared, we've had some posts come up that I haven't seen in forever, and I got like a like and someone shared it. It was like from 3 or 4 years ago. It was just, so people can see that stuff, but organically we try and make sure that it's everything that's pushing out there is relevant and that people will then engage with that.
Thank you, Ryan. Does that answer your question, Dr. Harmon?
I suppose I'm of a certain age, so, some of these things are beyond me. But I mean, I kind of get Facebook sort of, but the rest of them not so much. So.
As we wrap up here, the news releases we talked about, we try to find the major stories and events in the news. There's in the media, you'll hear them when you talk to a reporter, they'll say head, heart, and wallet, and they're looking for stories that make people think, that make people feel, or make people think about their money. And so when you look at news posts or headlines or anything, that's really the area where the media is looking at to highlight and focus on. And so you'll see a lot of that. So we use the news releases as another platform. We already said we have people engaging with us through our digital sections, but when we put out a release, we have distribution lists to the news agencies. And I think we have on our current distribution list, it also has our leadership. You all see those news releases, and we post those releases on our website as well. So, and then the news agencies can look at them and they can pick what they want to highlight. But when you do a release, you're saying this is something that we are wanting to share with you, and you're also saying this is something that we're prepared to talk about. So that's our opportunity to kind of blow our own horn or engage with the public on something that we want to share. Another thing that we've been working on for a number of years, and it continues to evolve, video production. We stream. Ryan talked about how we use Reels. We get video content and we share it with the public, and that is another means for us to engage, another means for them to figure out what's going on and maybe connect with us initially on that video, but maybe we're creating connection where they'll want to come back to the page, to the site, to talk about other things. We talked about this in a previous meeting, but as part of our upfit, we will be this year giving our residents the opportunity when they go through whatever streaming service that they're using now to have HighPoint as one of those feeds, have our app, so they can share streaming content or review streaming content that right now would have to be on Spectrum or on YouTube in some capacities. They'll be able to use some of those streaming platforms that they use for everything else to watch their favorite shows and movies. We make long and short form videos. A couple of years ago, we did our version of Dirty Jobs, and that is still one of our most popular videos. We went out and instead of saying, hey, public services, they've got a tough job, you can say that, but when you show a video of the staff members and the day-to-day of picking things up and some of the more challenging parts of the job, that's that picture that's worth 1,000 words. So we try to find those ways to engage with the public. We recently did a video for 911. So as we have time and energy, we have a small staff, and we try to maximize the content and the engagement, because essentially you have that team that's doing the production and video for the entire city and every department. So we try to make sure we get the biggest bang for our buck on any of those productions. And to also go with video production, of course, our council meetings. I was talking about some of the creative skits that we've done to do public service announcements or what have you. We also collaborate with some of our partners, whether it's HPU or the market, and try to create that global social media presence. One of the things that we are really happy and excited about this year, we were able to kick off our new print shop, which allowed us to do a number of things. Some of the things, though, we have quicker turnaround time on some of those printed pieces. And a lot of the assets that you see, whether they're banners, decals, or poles, we can do those in-house. And it just really cuts down on some of the weight and allows us to create a more efficient, whether it's signs or car wraps or what have you. Those things, much of that is done downstairs on our first floor in our print shop. But that material that's created there is another connection, yet another way that we're connecting with the public visually, be it printed material, handouts, what have you. We talked briefly about the podcast earlier in this presentation. You may recognize the gentleman there. The second season that we'll be doing of the podcast is...
It's me.
That's what it is.
We'll get some facial recognition software so we can figure out who that is.
People do confuse us.
But it's called That's My Point. And what it does is it talks about topics that are relevant to the community. Sometimes that goes beyond government and guests that are outside just of city staff. But just another means of engagement, and podcasts are very popular now among certain demographics like mine. So that's another way that we engage with the public.
So what's the engagement? How many people sort of checked into the first season?
Well, on the podcasts, the way we ran them, I don't know that we captured, and Ryan can pull some data on that. I don't have the engagement on that in front of me. I don't know that we have a measurable way of looking at that that's on this presentation, but we can get that.
On this one, I'll get you those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
What platforms are the podcasts on?
So you can get it any of the platforms you can listen to it. The first season was all about the brand story and was basically about our marketing and branding efforts that we have. Civic Plus was the ones to start that. When we are now taking it over and host it, like Jerron said, it was a good way to get the community involved. And we should do probably a murder podcast in the city of High Point. Then we'd have everybody and their mother listening to that, especially my wife. But it's a extremely popular way now to communicate your message and communicate in a way that people want to hear it. So it's more than what Jerron said. We want to talk about High Point, everything in High Point, right? What's your favorite burger? Or talk about events that we're doing here in the government and how we can tie those together and really share that message more of than just a government type podcast that probably has a target market in a certain niche, but we want to make sure that we are communicating with our residents and visitors. So that's kind of what we want. And the good thing about that is it's just not directly here in the city, right? I mean, anybody can listen to it all over the world, which is really good. So it is a very strong form of communication that has come on, very popular. A lot of people are utilizing, and it's a good way for us to get our message out there and to continue to tell our story. So.
To add to what Ryan said on the engagement piece, the podcast idea was one that we started with our vendor that helped us with our brand launch, with Civic Brand. The average person that we've talked to that's seen our brand, things like the flag and some of those other pieces, they are engaged in a way that we're finding they maybe hadn't even thought about the city's brand before. A part of that engagement and the success that we've had with people being exposed to it was our engagement that we used through Civic Brand. So they did surveys, they did digital engagement. Leading up, there were hundreds and hundreds of people that they were able to connect with across different platforms. So there is a correlation between the way we engage with people, the story we tell people, and how people think about what it is that we're explaining to them, how they think about our brand. So that engagement piece, if you get that part right, you create sort of this reservoir of interest and engagement with the public that becomes helpful as you continue to move through different areas and different topics. One of the last things I want to talk about here is experiential marketing. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but it's how you get a face to a name. It's us staying with our message, staying with our brand, and letting people see, feel, and hear what the city's doing. That when you come to an event, you actually can see the brand, you can experience some of those things. So as we continue with our engagement and as we continue pushing out our brand, we'll continue to use experiential marketing, things that we're getting real places, real people, real conversations, and real interaction. That's also a part of it, in addition to what we've talked about with, digital and print. Experiential marketing is very, very important to what we're trying to do and keeping the engagement with the community. At this point, well, Ryan?
Just to answer your question, the podcast with the picture up there of Britt was one of the most, it averages about, that series averages about 1,000 listeners. The one that you were on actually was one of the largest, and I'm not just saying that to, butter you up a little bit here, but that is true. So it was around 1,100 listeners to that specific episode.
Okay.
That's 1,200 people that wanted to see Councilman Moore.
Yeah, I was not on council when that happened.
So that's all we had. I'd be glad to entertain any questions that we haven't answered.
Okay, I have kind of a tough question, so I don't expect, a full ability to answer, but maybe you can. Because city government is different than a corporation that's trying to sell a product, and they're identifying a user that would need their product and who would identify with the brand automatically, and so you're kind of cutting out people. Whereas in our organization, we need to try to fight the algorithm, and we need to fight creating a specific user. Like, I know I'm the Facebook user that you're speaking to because
Thank you.
because in my house, when things go up on Facebook, we're talking about it. So, but how do we make sure that we're not just hitting the people who are already likely to engage with city government or with our services, and that we reach newcomers or people who traditionally have not been marketed to?
Well, that's one of the essential questions that we started with when we did the brand launch. And it was, how do we hear from segments of the community that, for whatever reason, are not engaged? And so when we talk about experiential marketing, one of the things that we did was we held a pop-up event on Washington Street in an area, and we got, just for example, we had people that came, believe it or not, we had people who didn't know that they could get tickets to go to a baseball game. And this was with the, we had the stadium by 3 years at that point. And so you never take for granted that there are people out there who don't know what you're doing. I've been at this here in the city for 12 years. Every year, we always get the question of how do we reach more people? And every year, we have people that have events, and I know all of you can relate to this. That an event comes up and people say, well, I didn't know anything about it. What today shows is how we don't just, so when we're talking about the way we engage, when we talk about those different platforms, if 70% of America is on social media, and we're finding ways to sort of crack into all those demographics, we are reaching people who may not be active with city information, but they're active on social media. So if I have, for example, if we're trying to do a job fair or a same-day hiring event, we look at, okay, who are the people that we're targeting that would be most likely to do this kind of job? And we draw a fence, and we engage people that are going to be on those devices, that are going to be engaging, but we find a way to get our content in front of them when they maybe cut on that phone and they got on Instagram or they got on Facebook. They had another intention, but we're able to kind of show them based on who they are, what that content is that's relevant to them. So it's always a numbers game and an engagement game, but we pride ourselves on reaching a wide variety and diverse audience. And we can always do more. There'll always be space to do more. But this kind of represents what that more has looked like this year. And to give you an idea, a lot of what you'll find is if in the weeks to come, if someone goes back and looks at this presentation, I guarantee there will be a third of it that someone says, wow, I didn't know you were doing that. What, you're on Flickr too, right? So I think we have to constantly tell the story and tell people what's out there, and it's repetition, like something like commercials, right? When you see a commercial, you might have seen the commercial 8 times. Someone else, when you're seeing it the 8th time, someone else might be seeing it for the first time. So you're constantly trying to find ways to engage. And I don't know, if, Ryan, if that was anything else that you wanted to cover with that.
Yeah, so, we kind of have the mindset, you want to see it, touch it, feel it, hear it, and love it, right? So it depends on our message we're spreading, right? We have 116,000 people in here. I want everybody to find out about this specific event. We have to take a look at it and understand the fact that people, okay, who would you like to market this to? Everyone. I understand that, right? But if we want to really boost our numbers, we got to engage with that specific target market on that specific item. So we'll take a look at, like Jerome brought up, potential hiring event we have for public services. We were hiring specific water sewer technicians. We were hiring specific jobs from all the way at the top, supervisor positions, to middle management, to entry-level positions. So we even had to take that and separate that out and take a look at what our target markets were. So some people will say, it's just got to be on social media, or, I only read the newspaper, or whatever that is. There's a market for each one of those. There's someone who probably reads that newspaper every day and maybe doesn't even open up Facebook, right? So what we do is take the approach of we try and target it to the specific people, utilizing the mediums that we have through social. And whether that's, like Jerome was bringing up, whether that's specifically, setting geofences and retargeting people, capturing their IP addresses and retargeting those people to come to a show. We do that a lot for the theater. So if the theater has a Southern rock band, and we have a Southern rock band, I'm going to set up a fence around there. I'm going to capture all those IP addresses, then I'm going to start pinging them with all these ads to come to ours, because they're already interested in that. Now, if I just sent that out, spent the same money, and sent that out just to everybody, we're not going to hit that many people. But if I can target those specific people, they're going to be more interested in that because they're already at one, right? So we do that. We set up fences around certain locations to capture some of these. Some of the advertising that we had specifically for that hiring event is someone like me is really looking for a pension, right? I'm 45 years old. I've got a family. I'm really looking towards my future in that aspect. Someone coming out of college could care less about a retirement plan right now. So to say, hey, we've got these retirement benefits, that's nothing. So we took a look at that, and what we did is put in the work from home on 3 days if that job allows, or ways to advance, or entry-level, might be an entry-level position, but, here's the salary range, here's what it is. So we took it and targeted, even within that specific marketing plan, we targeted those people to maximize that. And when we did something like that, we saw the return on our investment was huge. They had so many people there, they kind of had to turn away because they already had the jobs filled for that event. So it depends on what that is. Sending out one message to 100,000 people, you might think, well, 100,000 people are going to see that. Organically, they're not. We were talking about Facebook. If I have 100 people on my page, only 1.5%, 2% are going to see that, just basic organic reach. We've boosted ours enough that a lot more people are going to see that. So we try and take those little steps just to make sure that we can hit everybody in more focused target areas for each thing that we're working on. Does that kind of, in the long run, long story short, makes sense? And it's honestly, that question, I answer that question a lot, all the time. It's just, okay, my first question every time is, all right, who do you want to hit? And I know their answer is going to be everybody. And we just take everybody and we keep just focusing them down to maximize who's going to come to their event or who's going to see that information. And we really hit those people that want to see that. So,
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Were there other questions?
I have a few.
Okay.
So So 30% of people are not on social media. So how are those folks targeted? I mean, I'm assuming they maybe consume traditional media, and so you get it in the paper and.
Yes, yes. So for folks that aren't on social media, we have some of the other platforms. We have printed material. So currently, we do inserts in our utility bills that give some targeted information. There are in large gathering places where we have a lot of traffic in city buildings, like the library, or in customer service when folks are coming in to pay their bills. We have opportunities to put, flyers and handouts, but it's about being strategic. What we found as we've evolved in the way that we communicate and connect, people don't, the return on investment, if we were to just send out, packages of pages to each of our residents, a lot of that will probably end up in the recycle bin. So it's being very strategic about what information you want to share and what's the best place. And a lot of it is redundancy. So if you have something on a utility insert, or you have something that's in a news release, the way we try to approach it is we try to have that relevant information in as many places as possible. So that 30%, they might not be on social media, but they probably are reading the newspaper, or they're probably watching the news, or they're probably opening up that utility statement. And so we try to do that in a way that is very, very efficient without, just printing information for the sake of printing it, but having a targeted reach and process.
Yeah, I shared with the committee this newsletter from Louisville, and we talked about it the other day, that they send out, I guess, 6 times a year. I mean, it's a much smaller community, but their stats say that 90% of the folks find out about stuff in the city through this. I'm not suggesting we print these out because it'd be very expensive. But part of the thing with this committee is transparency, and it's kind of the stuff, the meat and potatoes of government that people make assumptions about, that we need to communicate with everybody. Particularly the budget. I mean, the other day, the budget was presented, but before the budget was presented, we had like 40 people in here, right? And after that, right before that, everybody cleared out, right? We had 2 people, right? Everybody needs to know about the budget. And a lot of times people think the council knows information that the general public doesn't know. It's not true. Whatever's, on the agenda, everybody gets to see it. Why we do enterprise funds and this, that, and the other, people just don't know about. And so how do we sort of increase our transparency through communication without self-selecting a segment of people who really care about government, rather than accidental kinds of things. I don't think you do social media posts about the budget. I mean, that doesn't happen, right? But that's really important. And why do we have a tech committee? Why do we have a community development committee? What is, transportation, what are they involved in? It's all kinds of stuff that can be kind of communicated with stuff, kind of the meat and potatoes of, local government. That's really critical. It would build trust in sort of some of our decisions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I think to your point, there are avenues where, historically people have done things like government 101 to help people understand how government works and in the ways that impact them the most. The other thing, though, I think we've got great partners in the community. The Visit High Point has a platform for events where anything that's going on, many of the things that are going on in the city are communicated through that platform. But I think sometimes we have to make a distinction between events and information. And so I think the event part, as far as telling people what's going on, I think we do a really good job with that, because it's easy, to your point, to say, hey, come here and have fun. But if I say, well, let me tell you about those enterprise funds, right? You just lost some of your audience. So I do think, and we joked about it, but I do think there are creative ways that we can talk about the budget through social. I do think there are ways, but it's about being deliberate and intentional on what those things are. But from the printing standpoint, I think if we maximize where we have the sort of these gathering points, whether it's folks coming in to pay bills, whether it's at the library, one of our most well-visited facilities. But then the things that we're doing now, we have a digital newsletter that we do now. It's called Inside High Point, and it highlights a lot of the things that are going on internally here. But it's more employee focused. There are ways that we can get that content out to the public with a mix of digital and strategic hard copies in areas. We continue to do that. We continue to evolve. But as those targeted areas are identified, and a lot of it's seasonal, so we're talking budget now. Maybe as we get closer in, we'll be talking about public safety, or we'll be talking about emergency preparedness, or weather information for severe weather. So we try to be relevant as the season dictates, but there's always room for us to make tweaks and improvements, and that's why we wanted to kind of present everything that we're doing and help you understand what we have, and then maybe look at areas of opportunity that we might have missed.
You can lead a horse to a council meeting, but you can't make him stay.
I know, but I guess if there's an e-newsletter and I've subscribed to it and it pops in my inbox, I scroll through, the budget, there's a public hearing on the 20th and the proposed property tax increase, I might be interested in that. I mean, rather than accidentally finding out about it because you're doing the doom scroll on Facebook. It's just an opportunity to be, I guess, more intentional with engaging folks. And if, because then we can say, we've got to see newsletter comes out once a month and kind of highlights what different departments are doing and updates on the library project and all that sort of stuff. And, then it's kind of on them to subscribe to it versus, I'm not sure how many people actually downloaded the budget that's on the website, but it took me 3 times to get to it. I know I got the book, but how many people downloaded that?
Right.
A handful. So it's just, but it's not very digestible either. But if you took that first page of the budget book and that was part of an e-newsletter, that would communicate a lot to people, I think, without them having so actively to see it by going 3 clicks on the website to find it.
One of the things, Dr. Harmon, that we're currently doing with the website redesign is just what you said. The content that is most visited or has the most interest, making that as easy, or the content that we want to highlight, making that as easy as possible for people to access. But we've also had a function where residents can self-select the topics that they want to get more information on, and they can subscribe. So if for those thousands of people that want to see the budget book and that information is going through, they can click through our website and say, send me information, and it gives a number of departments that we can engage, or information areas. So it's out there now. The challenge is continuing to remind people that it's out there, and at times when we're talking about things that have high interest, also mentioning some things that may be little nuggets of wisdom that folks aren't thinking about at that time. But it's a balance, and again, it's an evolving science of engagement, and we won't rest until everybody knows everything, right? But we're always going to have these segments of the population that don't know, and our challenge is always to figure out how to make that horse come and drink, Councilman Moore. So,
Good luck.
did you have other questions, Dr. Harmon?
No, not right now.
Okay. Ma'am?
You're good? Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say that, in my years of being on council and seeing the evolution and continuing evolution of communication and abilities to communicate, the ease of the communication is complicated by the number of ways you can communicate. And I've also come to the resolution that I think y'all do a good job. I think you do a really good job. And that will not ever end because the technology is changing and there's always more people, like you said. But at some point, individuals have to decide if they're going to engage. And you can chase it forever, as much time as I spend downtown at events and seeing all that's going on, that there's, as much as we want them to be there, because the whole goal from the very beginning of our revitalization is how do you get feet on the street? And that's a personal choice. And I think that you're doing a good job with the resources that you have, and I'm understand our desire for more and more clarity and communication. But at some point, it falls back on each individual citizen to do their part too. So, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that, we also want to make sure that, people know that if they do send a message on Facebook, people will see it and answer it. I love that. I mean, I think that at the SIM mapping a few weeks ago, there was a catchphrase of "there's no wrong door," and I love that, because wherever you show up, hopefully we have somebody there that's going to be able to help you, direct you. And a lot of times I saw this in my years in education, things don't matter to someone until they matter to them. So, I hear all the time, why aren't we teaching kids how to do taxes? Well, somebody who doesn't have a job and doesn't have that responsibility is not interested in learning how to do taxes. So I could give them 100 worksheets on how to do taxes, but it's not until that first W-2 arrives in their mailbox that they're going to actually want to figure out how to get the maximum return or to complain about the taxes that they paid when they get that first paycheck. So we hope that people are wanting to engage with the fun stuff. If they have issues and concerns, that they know how to find it. And it looks like, if the bill pay is the #1 item on our website, it looks like people who need to do business with us are finding their way to that portal. And we just want to keep continuing to make that better and better for the people that live here. So I appreciate y'all's presentation this morning. And are there any other announcements or comments? All right, with that, I will adjourn the meeting today. Thank you.